To begin my journey within this module, I started my research process by looking into and analysing the trends within younger consumers and how they will be prioritising their health entering 2025. I found this change was influenced by COVID and how the pandemic made people more aware of what was entering their body, allowing consumers to eat healthier and more fresh produce, making consumers more aware of what they're buying in every sector. From this trend, I looked at the McKinsey report for 2025 and came across elevated sportswear, the trend that will push through into the new year, in which controversial activewear clothing is heightened and becomes more than just a gym outfit. At this stage, I then looked into Next as a fashion retailer and analysed the activewear clothing they sell to their consumers, both online and in store, reviewing how they upsell their products compared to their direct competitors and other activewear sellers. In line with consumers wanting to be fitter in both body and mind, this linked closely with the ongoing trend and popularity of men's yoga and how it's becoming more prominent in 2025, analysing how the body and direct movements can benefit the mind. Linking with the sustainability of this module, I looked into both circular and linear processes which could be undertook for this project, analysing how to be ethical and sustainable within these practices. I looked at sustainable energy sources and eco-friendly materials, and also looking into natural dyeing and how I can maintain the colour of my garments by using nature's resources, and how I can achieve my desired colour scheme that is in line with the trend forecast for 2025, using things like onion leaves, nettles and avocado skins. This closely interlinks with the advances in technology, allowing for garments to be made seamlessly and with less waste. I found this through 3D knit technology and how garments can be constructed as a whole in a circular economy to maintain the process of being sustainable. I then looked into and reviewed activewear fabrics and the blends used in today's most popular yoga wear garments, and I was able to acquire some fabric samples that linked in with my colour scheme. I then looked back at yoga and analysed how the body moves during this exercise to get a greater understanding of the shape my garment needs to be. To know what my consumer needs, I spoke with someone who performs yoga on a regular basis and asked them a range of questions about what they desire in a yoga garment. From this, I was able to retain information in which I could influence into my design processes. After collating all this research, I then came up with my concept Under the Skin, linking to yoga, health and sustainability. After creating a profile page about my consumer, I was able to analyse what their lifestyle would be like and the type of garments they look for when shopping for yoga wear. After analysing the research I've conducted and the imagery that I was able to compile, I decided to create a range of mood boards and imagery to assist when making my 6-look lineup. I then pushed through with the sustainability aspect of my module, looking into zero waste garments and constructing a pair of pants with no waste, as well as making a zero waste jacket from one square piece of fabric and marking out each pattern piece on that block. I then began experimenting with draping on the stand and how I could mimic the movements and shapes created in yoga. I was influenced to do this after participating in a workshop in which I learned how to drape fabric in an aesthetic manner using one square piece of jersey fabric, in which I just cut a headpiece in and then draped it on a mannequin and then just played around with the fabric until I got my finished garment. From this, I was able to understand how I'll be able to use just one piece of fabric to create a sustainable garment. From participating in both the workshops on zero waste and draping, I was able to create design development boards with imagery, sketches and processes I've maintained, allowing me to come up with my 6-look capsule collection to reflect the research and ideation I've gathered. Throughout these looks, I've created yoga wear outfits with layering systems to allow the wearer to customise their look. I then began the process of trialling the harem style pants and how I could make them using square block patterns to make it easier to construct zero waste. I created 3 square patterns and pinned them in place to get the pants shape and the dropped crotch feature of the harem style pants. I then increased this to a full scale block. and decided to add pin tucks to the legs to add more detail and interest to the garment. I measured out the pin tucks on each side of the leg and then used a pattern master to create the curve. In line with my consumers' need to be comfortable and have adjustability within the garment, I decided upon creating an elasticated waistband in which they can adjust it to fit their comfort needs. Attaching this to the main body of the pants, I did this by gathering the material to ensure it fitted within the waistband and then sewed it down using a straight stitch. To ensure the pants were practical and didn't irritate the wearer by dragging on the floor, I decided upon adding cuffs to the bottom of the pants to ensure that they were secure around the wearer's ankle. With this, I was able to complete my toile to a high standard by using the pattern pieces I created. With these patterns, I was able to create a lay plan which was zero waste only when 3 garments were constructed at each time, which was ideal for batch or mass producing the garment. Using the zero waste lay plan I created, I placed all the pattern pieces onto my jersey fabric and cut them out accurately, ensuring that with the material I chose, they didn't lift or they were inaccurate. After cutting out all the pattern pieces, I pressed each piece out flat using the iron and then overlocked all the raw edges, ensuring to cut off the excess thread each time. I then moved on to constructing the pin tucks on each leg. For this, I used the measurements I'd written down from making my toile to then reciprocate the same pin tucks on the main garment, using a straight stitch to then stitch down the pin tucks on each leg. After completing this, I then pinned the legs to the crotch area, aligning the pin tucks on each side to make sure that they fit, and then used a straight stitch with my 1 cm seam allowance to sew them down. The next section was attaching the cuffs to the pants. I firstly used a larger stitch length to gather the hems of the pants to make sure they fit inside the cuff. I did this to each leg, ensuring it was gathered equally, and then I pinned the gathers in place to make sure they didn't move. After aligning the cuffs and sewing them in a loop, I then placed them right sides together with the bottom of the pants, aligning the seams to make sure it fit. I then went around section by section, pinning it in place to make sure the gather was neat, and then flipped both cuffs over to create the finished product. I then moved on to the waistband. Firstly, I folded over the waistband and sewed it together using the 1 cm seam allowance. After this, I inserted the elastic into the waistband and sewn both ends together to entrap it in a loop. After doing this, I gathered the pants by using a larger stitch length and then gathered them to make sure that it will fit inside the waistband due to it having elastic in. I then pinned it all in place, making sure that the gather was equal around the loop of the pants, and then used the 1 cm seam allowance with a straight stitch to attach them together. After completing this process, I was able to flip the waistband to then create the final garment.